police were sent into Poland, they were also required to make peace, roughly speaking. And so they started out by rounding up all the Jewish men between 18 and 65 and gathering them in stadiums and then shipping them off on the trains. But that isn't where they ended. They ended in a very, very dark place. I mean, these guys were going out in the field with naked pregnant women and shooting them in the back of the head by the end of their training. And what's really interesting about that is that their commander told them that they could go home at any time. So this is not one of those examples of people follow that, because whatever hedonic kick you might get from it that moment at night, you're going to pay for almost completely into adolescence. You know, because adolescence is a time people are still pretty impulsive and their view is quite short term, and they're more likely to pursue immediate pleasures and all of that, and that can get really out of hand. So anyways, they separate from the mainland and go on a boat, and so they're off to Pleasure Island, dark place. And the coachman opens the gates and lets the delinquents into Pleasure Island, and they basically have a riot. And this is Pleasure Island here. It's full of amusement park rides. And you know, one of the things that's kind of interesting about horror movies, I'm sure you've noticed this, is that they're often set in amusement parks. And clowns are often characters of horror. We'll leave the clowns aside for now, but the amusement park thing, that's pretty interesting. It's like, why in the world would an amusement park be a place of horror? And the first question might be, well, have you ever been to an amusement park? Because there is something about them that's really, they have a dark side, a clear dark side. And part of it is that people with nothing better to do are spending money stupidly, and they're being fleeced by the people who operate the amusement park. You know, and they have, let's say, a stereotypically dark reputation, and they're moving around all the time, which is also something that psychopaths do. And all they're doing is moving from community to community and taking the money from the rubes, fundamentally. And so, the amusement park, well, if you walk through an amusement park with that sort of thing in mind, maybe that's also coloring your vision, of course, but it's something that you can see very immediately. So there's something about them that's sort of deeply sad, but there's also there's an underlying horror that characterizes them, that it's easy for horror movie or horror novel writers to immediately expand upon. And there's something about it that makes sense to people. So it's too easy, maybe that's, and it's also all short-term gratification. That's the other thing. So you spend your money very rapidly and it's gone. Yep.
Well, it seems like a sort of celebration of meanings divorced from actual reality.
Yes, exactly. Well, that's the impulsive element. The comment was it's a celebration of meanings divorced from reality. Yeah, it's also outside of reality, right? That's why it's on an island. It's a separate universe. And it's a universe where nothing that's happening is connected to anything outside. And you're spending your hard-earned money, let's say, but it isn't that much, it's certainly not an investment. It's not that much different than burning it. Well, it is, because of course you get some pleasure out of it, but it isn't. Going there every day is probably not the wisest move that you could make. So, the animators do a good job of presenting what would you call it? The enforced hedonism, I guess I would say, of a place like that. This is a place where you're going to have fun. That's what it's for. So, anyways, Lampwick, who's got this very arrogant look on his face and this kind of strut, it's a bravado, that's what that's called. It's a false confidence, and it's the sort of thing that people do when they're trying to impress upon others that they're high in the dominance hierarchy, but really they're not. So it's a mimicry of dominance, but it's something that can be intimidating, there's no doubt about it. I had a friend, he didn't come to a good end, this person. He was a real good friend of mine when I was in junior high and high school, and he was kind of crazy. And he was tall, he was about 6'7", and he was pretty thin. And we used to go out to the bar now and then, and in many of the bars that we lived in this little town, there were bullies, and these were guys, and I worked in the bars, and I used to watch these guys, and they basically, there was a handful of them in town, pretty psychopathic types, and they'd go to the bar, and all they'd do is sit there and wait for someone to come in who they could beat up, and they knew who it was as soon as they walked in. That's actually why they were at the bar, and so they'd wait till someone came in who didn't look very confident, and who could likely be intimidated by this sort of thing, and then they'd tell them to come outside for a fight, and if they didn't, well, then they'd, of course, make fun of them, and if they did, well, generally they'd beat them up. My friend kind of cottoned on to this trick, and he started going to bars, and every time that someone like that came near him, he'd go outside and fight with them. And one of the things he observed right away is that almost inevitably when he went outside with them, they'd shake hands and make friends. So as soon as and it was really remarkable watching it.